Hi there! This is...
We're doing an advert.
Hi! Hello, this is A Stab in the Dark. We are doing a retrospective podcast, and today the following will contain Fantasia from 1940. The next sequence of events, we will go through a review of this film, which will take in the key of D minor. And
I need to fall into some pipes in the background.
Who's gonna like tug off Mickey?
Excuse me.
Tug off Mickey? What the fuck?
Did you watch a different version? Hosted on a completely different site.
I just typed in Steamboat Willie. Yeah.
2024.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, that's big.
Oh, jeez. So,
I am joined by Mike,
that's me.
by Dave.
That's me.
I'm Joe. And let's
That's
go. Whoa.
You are our very own Deems Taylor.
Yeah. Oh, righty then. So, Fantasia. Give us a background, Dave, to your sort of knowledge of Fantasia. I feel like all three of us have something of a knowledge of it. Any memories of Fantasia or what you know about it before we did this?
I had both of them on video. I had this and Fantasia.
What was your favourite Disney movie as a child?
Hercules.
Yeah, same.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I like the Aristocats.
It's a pretty good one. Yeah.
We are Siamese, please.
Yeah, that bit.
Yeah. Sorry, Dave.
So my memory of this one, I had them both on video. This one and Fantasia 2000. And I always remember not liking them as a kid. I'm not really sure why. Maybe they were just too old. I had a memory when I think back about Fantasia. I remember three segments. The famous one with Mickey. The scary as fuck one at the end.
Yeah.
And the one with like a toy soldier. And the one with the toy soldier was my favourite one. And so watching through Fantasia this time, I was so disappointed to find out that was in Fantasia 2000.
Yeah, I was trying to think of where that was.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
Do
I
not
saw
remember that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember like not liking it that much as a kid, and I've never rewatched it as an adult.
I mean, I love this movie, but I would definitely say those are the two memorable ones.
Yeah. Without jumping ahead too much, but on this watch, I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Go on then, Mike.
Yeah, I have a personal kind of attachment to this movie. I have no idea why, because it was a child brain, but this was my favourite Disney movie.
Wow.
When I was really young, we're talking like 5 and 6 and below, before I moved on to Hercules. Maybe because I was a kid and didn't really care about plotting or anything like that. I just liked the pretty stuff going on and so on. And because I loved it as a young person, I kept watching it, and I've seen this movie dozens and dozens of times. Just as like stick it on. It's 2 hours long. You can sit back and watch the pretty colours and so on, like they did in the 60s with the psychedelics and whatever.
Yeah.
It's very nostalgic to me, and I think even if I take that out of it, I think it's a very good movie. There's bits of it that are less strong than others, but love it. Yeah.
How about you, Joe?
I did grow up living this movie. From, I don't know, videotape around my grandma's house and stuff. It was good. I remember watching it around there all the time, especially the Mickey Mouse bit. I love that, and the final act with the devil and Night on Bald Mountain, stuff like that. I always remember those bits the most. I almost don't remember the rest of it at all. I didn't really care. I just skipped ahead to those two bits, and that's basically all I cared about. I didn't care about the narration in between. That was kind of my background with it. Just kind of loved it on those two parts.
What about the sound wave, though? I love that bit.
that wouldn't have interested my child brain.
I guess we'll talk about it, yeah.
I like that bit as a child.
My child brain isn't interested in such things. And my brain today isn't interested in such things.
Oh.
My still childish brain.
Poor old sound wave.
So, it's a nice personal connection to it. It's not my favourite Disney film by any means, but I also think it's quite incredible due to its just what it was and what it represents from now perspective about how influential it's been. I think it's quite incredible. I think it's something Disney are shit at today. Anything experimental, anything good, they're pretty shit.
Well, they don't even do hand-drawn animation.
No, exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't take a gamble like this now, would they?
No. Which goes to show you how far removed they are from its original concept.
Well, I'd love if they did, like a Fantasia 2025, 2030. I would love that. But
they would do now, because it would be a remake or a reboot. And they love that. You know,
this is true.
It's not... They'd have to do something wholly original.
That'd be horrible, like live-action remake of Fantasia.
yeah.
No, CGI remake.
Yeah,
Real
well,
maps.
the live action of the Lion King live-action remake.
If they
like
change, like experimented with the format, like now, like they would have done back then, like maybe do like a VR version of it or something, like really do something
or
new
totally interactive in some way. Like an almost game, like Bandersnatch type thing. Yeah. Well, I think this movie has its flaws. I think it takes a little while to get going. The first two are a bit weak. So that's the one where it's just the conductor doing his thing, and you get little bits of like.
So I disagree. I disagree with that. That's that first section is
one of your favourites.
Yeah, it is actually. So when Dean Saylor like does the initial introduction, he talks about 3 types of music, right?
Yeah.
One that has a story, one that kind of essentially paints a scene or a sequence of scenes with music, and then one that's got no story at all.
Yeah.
And so he was talking through that, and I was thinking, okay, the ones with the stories, these are the ones I remember. The one with Mickey, the one with the devil at the end. These are the ones I'm going to enjoy the most. And then it proceeds then to show an example of the final type, which is music that has no story. And I was just so transfixed. But the way he describes it is, it's a visualization of what an audience member's mind would go through listening to the show in person.
If they close their eyes.
You start by imagining the conductor and then the players in the orchestra, and gradually as you listen to the music, it becomes more and more abstract. And I was just transfixed. And maybe like my top 3, this first one, I really, really enjoyed it. For that same reason, I liked the Soundwave section that introduced Act 2. Yeah, I really like this one, to be honest.
Yeah. I do love the Soundwave because it's got kind of quirky 40s comedy energy to it.
Yeah.
The first one, I mean, I'm not hating it. I'm just saying in comparison, I'd put it probably down there. The same with the second one, which kind of does... It's the one with...
the Nutcracker Suite.
Yeah, flowers dancing and so on. Yeah, I mean, because it's pictures and music, the best way I can probably analyze them is for how iconic or memorable they are or seem to me, and those are ones that I kind of forget. I feel like those two, but then after that, I'm kind of... My only other complaint is the Greek gods one. It's a little too long for my taste. That one goes on for so long.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's just carry on with these ones for now. Let's have a look at the first couple in here, because they sort of go from one to the next quite quickly. And the first one is fine. It's nothing really, is it? It's an
introduction to the concept of what they're showing.
Exactly,
right?
that's what I mean. It's nothing though. Like it's.
I mean, I could imagine
it's
in
like just being in an orchestra.
Yeah, I can imagine in 1940 that would blow people's minds. But in the current day, not
doesn't
so
do
much.
But that's because we're just spoiled nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree. Like it really worked on me, and it really sold me on the concept of the film. And remember, I came into this like not particularly looking forward to watching it again. I was looking forward to seeing the final sequence.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like super excited to watch it again. But then my opinion instantly switched watching this first section. I really enjoyed it, and for me, it was just instant proof that the concept works.
Yeah.
And then I lamented that there weren't like many more other Fantasias that they did. And I actually probably will go back and watch Fantasia 2000. Just kind of in my own time now.
I'm not saying I say it's nothing in the context. I like it, but it isn't much. It's fine. It's an overture. It's an introduction. That's what it's there to do. It serves a purpose to bring us into something that they're going to do, which is going to be experimental.
Yeah, it's like a demonstration of concept, isn't it? That isn't too difficult or involved.
But I'm more on your side with it in the fact that I just think, through a modern lens, it doesn't necessarily do the same thing.
I don't hate it. It's fine. Maybe I would like it more if it wasn't the leading one. I feel like the leading one probably should be bookended by what is already at the end. which is my favourite one, and maybe they should have led with the Mickey Mouse one, because those are the two strongest.
But they've
most
never.
memorable ones.
But this is something that would have never happened before. Like, this is quite an incredible. New
As I
bang.
say, I'm using my 2025 brain
Yeah.
or born in 1994 brain to kind of analyze it, right? So to me, because it seems flatter than the others, then I don't know, for whatever reason, I just want to get to the good stuff, you know.
But like the Oriental mushrooms.
Yes. Or
Those mushrooms specifically had an Oriental flair to them, so they went with it.
or the banned slave centaur.
Yeah, no, I
you
don't
seen
know
that on
about this.
YouTube?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You just briefly mentioned it. I've never heard of this.
So if you watch the Greek gods one again, it's not super noticeable unless you know, but there's very much zoomed in bits when you look at one of the particularly blonde white female centaurs, and that's because she's always got a black kind of slave centaur with pronounced lips and so on.
Really?
And she like shines the shoes of the horseshoes of the centaur girl,
God.
and like
Right.
carries her wreath and keeps falling over and like gets like pulled behind and so on. And she's digitally removed from the bit where, is it Hermes, the Greek god
No, it's
that's chasing all the centaurs?
I wrote it down.
When he falls off the chair,
The god of wine, is that what you're talking about?
yeah,
Bacchus.
Bacchus, fair enough. Yeah, when he falls off the chair, that scene wasn't a zoom, that was digitally removed. So I don't know whether that was in the 60s, but the other cuts were in the 60s. But yeah, it's not a good look.
No.
It's not a good look, but it also means that you have to review this from a modern perspective because they've modernized it into that way. So
Yeah.
then I can say the first bit then, shit. I don't think that. But I also think that if you are going to take out the historical context of the film, then it changes the way that someone like ourselves will review it.
Yeah, I don't
Because it
necessarily
opens up
agree.
the floodgates for us to
Yeah.
look at it through a more modern lens.
I don't necessarily agree with its removal, but I definitely, having seen those scenes, because they're free on YouTube, there's like a minute and a half of scenes. It's not a lot of scenes cut. They're quite shockingly racist, even for
They'll change the tone.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, to briefly touch on it, I'm all for not removing these scenes at all, but if it's a children's movie that people are going to put on for their children and leave them unattended with
Yeah,
it,
you can't have that on,
maybe that's grounds enough for anything to be removed that's objectionable.
or at least the option not
Or
to
have a
that
toggle
in.
for it, yeah.
Because I agree, you don't really want to show kids that unless you're in
because
a
they're not
historical
going to be
context.
viewing it in with the right frame of mind to understand
You're there
what
to
they're
have
seeing.
fun and see Mickey Mouse be a sorcerer. You're not there to watch some horse caricature
critique
or
racial
black.
caricatures. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas for something like this, potentially you could look at that from a different lens as such in here. What do you reckon, Dave? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm just it's quite messy because I have to agree with what Mike says. You know, in general, I don't really like the idea of like censoring art after the fact. Really, out of principle in a way.
And bearing in mind, this isn't what people accuse Disney of doing recently. This is the re-release in like 1969.
Yeah, I mean,
this was
that's
removed.
I find that really interesting, actually, that it wasn't like an outcry. Since it got
Yeah,
pointed
I mean,
to
it's
Disney
right
Plus.
slap in the middle of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I was expecting like
90s or something, perhaps.
Yeah. Or it just gets put on Disney Plus and suddenly there's an outcry about it or something. It's interesting what you say about maybe if there was an edited version for kids or something, and
that's the biggest argument against. For removing them that I fully respect.
Yeah, because I guess like otherwise they'd have to give it a restrictive age rating or something, right, in order to try and enforce the
R-rated Fantasia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. Like, I as an adult would have preferred the option when I watched it on Disney Plus to watch an unedited version. They show a warning before the edited version anyway, saying that some of the depictions are harmful,
maybe
offensive,
a Oriental nature,
wrong at the time and wrong now.
maybe protecting kids. It's interesting.
I don't necessarily think it protects kids. I just think it protects that obviously that is completely wrong, and in 1940 maybe you could get away with it, but it still wasn't right then. I mean, it's 1940. It isn't 1840. Slavery as such has been abolished in its format in America at the time.
Yeah, but Walt Disney has his history and reputation as a racial, racist man. So.
But the art is the art as well, though. Even in its like horribleness. And I know it's very messy.
But I think it would be sad if kids were prohibited from watching it purely because of those scenes being in it and there not being a cut without those scenes. Because when people talk about Disney magic and the magic of Disney, I think of this movie personally, because I think it's the most distilled bit of like bright fun.
For sure. Yeah.
Disney ever created, because I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the other very early Disney ones. They're fine, but I don't have a big connection to them. But I think it would be sad if kids couldn't experience that magic because of the objectionable material in there. Yeah. The second one I think is a little bit of nothing as well. It's another kind of introductory one.
The Nutcracker one.
Yeah, that's the one with the orbs and the fairies and the mushrooms and the
it's
flowers, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think the later ones do the same thing better, which is stuff dancing to the music and things.
Yeah, I think the one with in the second
other.
half with the hippos is probably a better execution of that.
Yeah, I would say so.
But yeah, it's okay as an introduction. It's again it's because it's now an introduction to the second type of story, right? Which is because they're little like snippets of the ballet, right? Little parts of the ballet, and each part of the ballet is a separate
yourself with the format,
kind of vignette. Yeah, it's like like an anthology within an anthology. So it was okay. It wasn't one of my favorites. It was definitely not one I remembered. It was fine. I liked the idea of like the personification of the flowers as when they're turned upside down, they look like women in dresses dancing around.
Cool. I think that's the most strong visuals I have of that. Segment. Yeah.
There's some cool bits within it. I don't think it's that good. I think it's a bit stilted. I think it's a bit boring. I think it's a bit dated.
Boring is a bit strong, I would say, but
at the same time, that's from a modern pair of eyes. I'm not saying it isn't ingenious and incredible. I'm just saying, as a modern review, I don't really care for it that much.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is because the highs of this movie are so high, this seems like much more of a low than it probably is. And I mean, it's fine.
Saying all of that, I still think it's an ingenious movie. And I think every single part is incredible, imaginative, of its time. It's mind-blowing if you're from that era. If you're from 1940 and you're in America there and then, like, how cool is that to have seen that?
And it's full creative freedom being
trippy
put forward onto the screen. They're not beholden to a plot or characterizing people knowing that they have this background around them or this characterization that they're going to have to do with voice work and so on. They can be anything they want, anything the animators desire.
I think the whole idea behind Fantasia is so cool that I know that Disney was like really involved in the conceptualization of the animation, but and like the context of the music was taken into account, but like he would quite often like reinterpret the context of it. And like, for example, the Nutcracker is a ballet, and so it's about dancing, but they don't just show, like, they don't animate human ballet dancers. They take that idea.
It's creating something new out of an established piece of music and
performance. And I think Deems Taylor, maybe at the very beginning or introducing the Nutcracker section, says that something like whatever the artists think of when they hear the music, or probably Walt Disney and the other people like conceptualizing the animation, whatever they thought of, would be what would be animated, and I really think that's cool.
Yeah, because they say before the Nutcracker one, they literally say there that this is as far as the Nutcracker you'll see. is in the music. You won't be in this. He states quite obviously that this is going to be something different, something new.
And and that idea of like as you say, recontextualizing, basically repurposing the art for something else, like taking that art through the lens of another creative to produce something new. Is really cool.
That may well, if you were to hear that piece of music that you're probably not that familiar with in the first place, but the visuals that you see in this movie that go alongside it may now be just a complete innate part of that music to a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's definitely true of the Devils section. Whenever I hear that music, I always think of that.
Straight to it. And the same with the Mickey Mouse.
Well, I think of Itchy and Scratchy when I hear that one.
Well, which is also kind of the same.
Of course, yeah.
But I think, regardless of I'm saying this is one of the weaker ones, but I still think it's great because I think we need more of this kind of micro genre of animations in front of musical works by other people, right?
For sure.
So, like Interstellar 555 is the movie by Daft Punk featuring the entirety of Daft Punk's Discovery album with a completely animated, no dialogue or anything other than the visuals to tell you the story. So I love that.
I really like that film as well. But like Daft Punk were...
They sort of had their own story when they were writing.
Yeah, and they were part of the creative process behind the movie, right, as well. So they were essentially like animating the story they had in their mind for that album when they wrote it. Yeah. And it's still really interesting. But imagine if it was another... like a completely different creative team that heard that album and thought of that story.
Yeah, and just because it's the story doesn't mean that the visuals aren't completely and totally down to the creative process, right? Like I think I've said it on this podcast before, or I've definitely said it in conversation before, but Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, if someone was to make an animated version, like video to go along with the album, I would absolutely love that.
Man, I think you have said that before. That would be really cool. Yeah.
Just because everybody loves music they like set to interesting visuals that tell some kind of story, or at the very least express the music
just
in a
use Windows Media Player. It always gives you those
the sound wave
exactly
to do it for me.
So you mentioned it. We'll go to the Sorcerer's Apprentice, which comes next, and it's Mickey Mouse.
Undoubtedly the most iconic
question
segment of the movie.
It's what fronts the pages of any DVD, Blu-ray, poster of this podcast.
I would be willing to bet that swathes of people have never seen Fantasia, but they know this or have possibly seen this.
That image of Mickey in the hat and the robe. I mean, when I think of Mickey Mouse, that's the first image of Mickey that I see, and I know he's been around for like 20 years before that, right?
But I think it's the most enduring kind of presentation of Mickey Mouse we have, because I know he's got a lot of other straight to DVD movies, and he's got the shorts at the very start of Disney and so on, but I don't think anything.
He doesn't really have a Mickey Mouse proper movie in so I do think of this.
Not like the Goofy movie, which is great. Like, but yeah, I mean, he's got Mickey Mouse's Clubhouse, I think, was a long running thing that a lot of people probably younger than me would think of. But no, I would say most people. This bit in Fantasia.
We didn't front load the podcast by saying why are we doing this when we have before done Cannibal Holocaust, where we've done Ants. How does this fit into horror? And I think,
this is the first taste of what could be called horror.
Potentially. I think there's some, as we said, some psychedelic elements within the start of it. I think it's pretty horrific to watch dancing oriental mushrooms.
I loved it. So.
No, I don't mind it. I just think, you just think of horrific things, and oriental mushrooms, little oriental mushroom fellas, high on that list for me.
I see. You didn't realise you had nightmares about
it. Yeah, I always have nightmares about oriental fellas, mushrooms.
Maybe you're from 1940.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe they should bring back the horse.
I don't think the problem wasn't that it was a horse. It wasn't racism towards horses.
Yeah. What?
Anti-horse propaganda.
Yeah. I don't like anti-horse propaganda.
Nobody wants that.
That's what the civil rights movement was about. The horses.
Justice for March for the horses.
Yeah.
horses on the front of buses.
Yeah.
But
You
yeah,
need to go into the horse section. Yeah.
but the Sorcerer's Apprentice is the first example of a complete story, right?
Yeah.
In fact, like the origin of the music came after, like the music came after the original poem.
Oh, right.
So actually, in this case, the story came even before the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, yeah, like you mentioned horror just now, like this one is the first taste of that for me. Like I find, like I found like the magician. There's something very creepy about that guy. Like
Yeah, he's got something about his
Mickey's
eyes.
kind of his slave.
Kind of
yeah,
soulless eyes.
exactly.
Apprentice /
Yeah.
maybe on his fucking work papers.
Yeah, apprentice,
when the
yeah.
police come
Yeah.
around saying, "Oh, have you got an apprentice?" Yes.
An unpaid apprentice
Yeah,
that just
yeah.
fills up a well with water
Yeah,
all day.
that's a
But it's
real
making him
great
just carry
apprenticeship.
water when he obviously could just do magic to do all that
Yeah,
stuff.
he's just
And-
basically torturing him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
It's like
Yeah.
most builders' apprentices just out there, like having to do the
Yeah.
same shit.
But that silhouetted scene where Mickey chops the hell out of the broom
yeah.
is
Red,
so
like the red
horror.
background. Yeah.
And so
And violent
horror for
with
1940.
the act,
yeah.
like just the actual act of like axing something essentially to
Yeah,
death, like
correct.
a sentient thing being axed to death.
Before Looney Tunes, I believe, all of Looney Tunes.
I don't know.
And probably around the same time as early Tom and Jerry. I'm kind of
He's just free
saying
balling.
you're
freeballing
going
here.
for it,
But I'm going to put my foot down. I don't think Looney Tunes is that old.
Mike Rogers' history.
Yeah.
So talk to
You'd have
us.
to put the disclaimer here. Mike is wrong. It was actually 1932.
Yeah.
I think maybe the main reason I wanted to do this one and why I was convinced that we should perhaps do Fantasia in this series was what you said about it before on one of our very first podcasts about
The actual very first. Yeah.
talk to us more about that, like, because you were saying about this is why I was trying to get at, like, our childhoods with
Yeah.
this film.
Well, I mean,
because why is this in a horror podcast? What is it about it? Why in our childhood did this help us get to the where we are?
This
now?
movie spurred me in. It's one of the stepping stones. I basically laid out stepping stones as to how I ended up being a massive horror fan as I am now. The particular part I was highlighting was the last segment, which is very much the most outwardly horror-y segment of the bunch. You know that cuts exist or were released without that because it scared children and there were complaints and
I
so
could
on. And
believe
then it
that,
was
yeah.
inserted in later on in the late 90s or something because it is kind of scary. It's definitely scary if you're 7 years old. But I liked being scared, I feel like. I must have done if I watched it that many times. And this was my favourite segment. I feel like I can't have watched it in 2 hour entire, especially when you got a VHS and you can just do this to rewind about, like, I don't know, 10 minutes and then watch the end
I
again.
bet that final session was like scratched and like
It's pristine 4K up to that bit. Yeah, but I watched that bit so many times. It's ingrained in my memory. I feel like I've watched it just on YouTube. The whole thing's on YouTube, like 13 minutes long or whatever, so many times. I think it's
a great length for a kid as well. 13 minutes out of a very long. It's actually quite a long film, 2 hours odd. So
Yeah.
13 minutes, and it's such a highlight.
It's just so involving because the music is just so powerful and it brings you in. It's not some of this lighter stuff that you get towards the start. It's like big banging, notes and so on. And you got the spooky skeletons and there's so much darkness, but then
Shadows.
there's lava and colour and reminded me a lot of another of my favourite movies, which was the Black Cauldron, which is another Disney movie from the 80s that's very similarly dark. I think this kind of like funneled me along the path towards real horror movies for adults and so on, because it purely is, I think it is quite scary.
Yeah, I reckon for me, I don't remember ever being scared of this, more enthralled by its music and by the Mickey Mouse bit and him being able to bring these things to life. That's where I always seem to go with this.
Yeah.
I don't think of it as horrific, but now through like my eyes now, when he's cutting up, as you say, David, like a sentient being, is sort of, wow, yeah, this is horror. But I'd never really thought of that until Mike said it in our first podcast. I'd never looked at it like
possibly
that.
it's more horror than it was back in the day.
Yeah.
Purely because cartoons aren't like that anymore. It's not like, I don't know whether anyone under the age of 20 has ever seen Tom and Jerry or Looney Tunes these days. I somehow doubt that they have. They might know who Bugs Bunny is or Tom and Jerry are, but that level of kind of violence in cartoons is not mainstream or everywhere anymore.
But then horror and spooky themes are in all sorts of these childhood stuff. Scooby-Doo, Courage, The Cowardly Dog, like Tom and Jerry. You know, these are things in these cartoons for young kids, and this is part of that.
I think it's slackened recently, but there's a lot of stuff 90s and before, definitely. I mean, I would say Ren and Stimpy is quite horror-y, but it's kind of gross out-y.
I'd love to get like a Gen Z or Gen Alpha on and ask them like what their childhood trauma memories are.
Yeah.
Because as you say, like a lot of stuff from the 90s and beyond are things that I think of when I think of like childhood trauma, like things that you watch now as an adult. You're like, oh, that's not very scary, but you remember it so vividly.
Yeah. And maybe I'm just ignorant to the fact that there are still.
Yeah, I mean,
there probably are.
Presumably, right? Like, presumably.
I mean, a lot of kids watch.
Look at Coraline,
Adventure Time. Yeah. And there's kind of spooky, funky characters in a lot of these.
Coincidentally,
like Nightmare Before Christmas, and
Neil Gaiman, horrific. I mean, even look at Doctor Who. When I was 10 years old, Christopher Eccleston's Doctor happened and the gas mask child happened, and I was enthralled by that. I was scared but wanted to watch it. Voldemort was around.
Goosebumps, the TV show.
Goosebumps was
amazing.
Around.
Yeah.
You know, all of this stuff was there, right there when we were growing up. And today, kids, they've got like Coraline. They've got the parents who now are introducing these old TV shows to their kids. Yes, things may not be quite as cohesive as they were once upon a time when CBBC and CITV were everywhere, but these horrific elements will always get through, and I'd say that Fantasia is still probably being watched quite religiously by parents and kids.
Yeah, I'd imagine
in the same way, because that's the Disney way.
My presumption is that, you know, everyone ends up showing most of the Disney films to their kids. Go through the back catalogue. You can't skip Fantasia, surely. So hopefully it's in there.
And you shouldn't skip any of them because they're all brilliant. These early Disney stuff are fantastic. And then the Renaissance in the 90s was fantastic. And it's just kind of maddening to me that they can go off something like Fantasia and then the 90s, and they can just become the shell of their former selves, which they are today. But they live off their history. They've got such a rich history that they can survive off that. And they do it pretty goddamn well. Almost
like single-handedly support a streaming service just on their own back catalogue.
Exactly. Yeah. And they've been smart with their back catalogue. They haven't just willy-nilly released a videotape of it. Or they've been very smart with their home media in the past. When things are available, when was that video released? When was the first DVD?
I remember like the
special edition,
the scarcity of the Lion King, and when it was big news, it was coming out on Blu-ray and all that stuff. Yeah,
well, it's very very powerful marketing, because you can ask anyone what's your favorite Disney movie, and they know exactly the kind of choices they have on offer. If I asked one of you what's your favorite 20th Century Fox movie, what's your favorite MGM movie, you're gonna have to think quite hard about
probably a James Bond movie.
Yeah, well that's an easier one, I say. But yeah.
RKO.
Yeah. But everybody knows what a Disney movie is, and I'd say this is up towards the top of the bests, for sure.
I'll definitely say that after this watch, yeah.
So Dave, give us a bit more about that idea of you and your childhood with the horror elements of this. That's what I want to know a bit more of.
What, Fantasia?
Yeah, Fantasia, Disney, like these sort of things. Like, do you remember anything? Because I really don't have that much memory, other than really enjoying it.
Well, like I say, I don't particularly remember enjoying Fantasia, and I didn't like volunteer like myself watching it. I definitely remember, and before rewatching it for this, I definitely remember the sequence with the devil at the end. I think my like early horror-related Disney memory is Pinocchio, actually. The bit where he's turned into a donkey. It's like burned into my brain.
It's a famously horror sequence.
Yeah.
Same with Dumbo, where he's on the drugs and the spooky pink elephants and so on. Yeah.
It's interesting on reflection, I suppose, like the impact that these things had in driving me towards enjoying horror. Because when I think back to Pinocchio, when I think back to Dumbo, those sequences are the first things that come to my mind. And that kind of to me suggests that, you know, I had like a taste for this very, very young.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Yeah.
Because your non-horror people would probably jump straight to a song for either of those, wouldn't they?
I can't think right now. I can't think of any songs right now off the top of my head. I'm sure if I thought about it, I would. But I think of those sequences, and very early, like going on to like things like Scooby Doo,
Zombie Island.
Yeah, well, definitely that. But even the earlier films and then the earlier TV show, like the '60s show, I remember having on video a lot.
Yeah, it's very good.
But it's interesting because I wouldn't have called myself a horror fan until a lot later. In fact, I would have said I don't like horror films; they scare me. And it was only kind of going through my own personal journey and discovering horror kind of in my teenage years, kind of spurred on by my friendship with you. And then it's on when I realized, okay, I love this genre. And then I reflect back and I remember, my favorite Simpsons episodes were the Halloween ones. All the Disney moments I remember from the really early.
It's like
Disney.
A revelation.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which, there was like a disconnect. I was watching that show, and like it's not a terrifying show, but it's definitely horror themed.
Very much so.
But I would be watching it and saying, I don't like horror. And then I look back and I think, yeah, I do.
The elements are all there.
Yeah.
But I think this is the multi-layer of being a human. I think what horror adds into that anyway. But this sort of stuff, we're faced with death every day. We're faced with living and what's horrific. We're faced with what's on the news. We were as kids. We are now. Like, everything going on in the world is not isolated into one thing. You can't have a good movie and not have some sort of undertone of some sort of
threat or
and isn't
tension.
that all horror adjacent at the end of the day? Isn't that all
pretty much
of it? So yeah, let's.
I feel like I could argue any horror movie, that any movie is a horror movie if I was given long enough to think about it. Send one in, and I'll give you a reason.
That could be its own video. That'd be fun.
Yeah, quite possibly. How is High School Musical a horror movie?
Like a Ross Noble style trail of consciousness, where you try and make these connections to try and connect this thing to horror somehow.
Yeah, just psychotically moving along until all of a sudden I'm talking about Friday the 13th and it's parallels with so and so. Yeah.
So let's move swiftly on to the writer's spring. And the visual history of Earth's beginnings depicted by selected sections of ballet score.
I love this one.
Birth to Dinosaur.
So this one, this
is in my top 3.
This is my favourite one on this watch. This was
that was.
We're both in on this.
Yeah, the hype is here.
Yeah.
So Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal.
It's like Hitchcock watching the ball.
Yeah, so I mean, like the Mickey Mouse one and the Devil one, obviously were the ones in my mind. I was most excited.
Those are the most iconic and memorable ones.
And I really enjoyed the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I guess because I didn't remember anything about this one. And then it's introduced, and he talks about kind of like the science, and also the way that they recontextualize the music.
Yeah.
So it's about history. The original song's about history, but it's a ballet, I believe, or at least a dance. And normally it's like tribal dances from around the world, like historical tribal dances.
I think he says that in the
exactly. I'm just like paraphrasing what he says. And then Disney was like, we're going to take that idea of it being about history and we're going right back. And it's so cool. Again, it's this idea of like recontextualizing, to have a different creative mind looking at a creative work and making it something new, which I said before. And I'd like you to talk about all the science and then to actually watch like the birth of the universe and going all the way through to the design.
It's another one with a very strong musical track to it.
Yes,
a lot more of a pronounced kind of lower tones and bombastic
like
finishes.
The bit with the volcano,
to me.
the bit with the volcanoes and the bass with the volcanoes erupting. And
and the big boy T-Rex is there. And he's actually kind of scary as well in a horror way. And he has that fight with the Stegosaurus.
Oh man, I was on the edge of my seat.
Disney film.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Disney film from like 2000, I think, called Dinosaur, like CG.
I quite like that one. It's underrated.
I think I love that
about
film.
it.
But you know, when like towards the end when the dinosaurs are going extinct and
spoilers. Spoiler warning, please.
They're like marching through the.
Yeah, it reminded me of that as well.
Were you thinking of Dinosaur as well?
Yeah, I think the design of the T-Rex, because they're kind of. Well, it reminded me of 2 dinosaur movies, which are one's definitely Disney, Dinosaur that you just said.
Walking with Dinosaurs?
No. Land Before Time.
Yeah.
Very similar T-Rexes in that. I don't know. Is that Disney? Do you know what I'm on about,
No,
Joe?
no, I
I don't think. I don't think it is. In fact, I think probably Dinosaur was like a response
What's
to that.
it called? Land of the Dinosaurs.
Land Before Time.
Land Before Time. There was like,
There's like 8 of them or something.
shitloads of them. Yeah.
Yeah. But either way,
Oh, I remember this. Yeah,
with Littlefoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But threatening dinosaurs, very similar in design, as you say, to Dinosaur. Yeah. Well, there we go. Yeah.
What do you think of this one, Joe?
Yeah, it's good.
Great.
Is this in your tops?
No, it's not my top 3.
Mm.
I like the dancing hippos. So
And then the 2 we've put in there as well.
yeah. I think,
If I was to make a top 4,
See, but
then
that's
the
not-
hippos would be there.
but they're off the podium then. And if you're thinking in racing terms, 1, 2, and 3.
As you
would
always
count.
should be.
Yeah.
Well, if we do the F1 system, your beloved F1 system, it means to get points.
What? It's not just my beloved F1 system. Countless millions.
Well, it's
beloved
mostly
F1
beloved by you here, so
Well,
you're the
go on then. Give me an alternative.
biggest belover. I don't know. Everybody rolls a dice and gets that many points.
And this is why you didn't come up with a concept.
I don't think anybody was going to believe I did come up with a concept anyway. So
Why would they believe that? What?
that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying.
Oh, I
They
see.
wouldn't
Sorry,
believe it.
I misheard you. Sorry.
Yeah. That was a nice bit of high energy there, though. I liked it.
Yeah, this is a good sequence. I like it. It's all fiction, obviously, but that's the point.
Well, the existence-
creationist
Well, yeah,
Joe.
it did say in the IMDb trivia that they were planning on going to humans, but they didn't want to mess with the the creationism kind of angle. Yeah.
And tell me, what day did God make dinosaurs? And there we go. He
The
did.
devil made them and put them in the earth to trick us.
Yeah.
That is what they believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
well, I'm
I was just laughing. Like, what a ridiculous story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do love that this is kind of scientific fact of the time that is now.
It's interesting,
no
isn't
longer
it?
True, with the drought and the flooding.
With
and
the
so on.
drought and the flooding and
With
the
the
ding,
drought
ding,
and the flooding,
ding,
yeah. Exactly. It was. It's kind of insightful in more than one way when you see.
Probably totally wrong now, theoretically.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's no meteor because apparently it didn't take till the 80s when that was like.
Is that accepted
completely-
like 100% now as fact that it was the meteor?
Yeah,
I
but
believe
then-
so because they've got the craters to prove it, haven't they? Like gigantic craters that couldn't possibly have not wiped out all land life on Earth.
I know, like, science is all fact-based, but facts change as we move on time.
Yeah,
So,
by definition, yeah.
yeah. So it all depends. At the moment, we're saying meteors. Maybe
It was
by
aliens,
the time this,
maybe.
yeah, by the time this podcast comes out,
You think it's that much of a turn? We're right on the cusp of the new theory.
Could be the Oriental mushrooms destroyed
Oh yeah.
everything on Earth.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was.
Dancing around.
No, the devil made them up and put them in the ground.
Oriental mushrooms.
Yes. The devil made them
the
up
devil,
and put them
Walt
in Disney
Disney.
movies.
Yeah. Then we have the intermission, which I believe should come back for all movies.
I know, I wrote that down as well. I miss intermissions.
Yeah, but it wasn't a full intermission, though, was it? Like it was supposed
There's
to
a
be
bit going
probably
on.
20 minutes of, the title card.
Yeah.
But I love that in older movies like 2001 and your Ben-Hur and your Spartacus and so on. But it was lovely lovely is a bit strong.
No,
but
it's
it was
lovely.
It
You
was
said it.
charming, I would
Oh.
say, to see the. Yes, it was charming,
Yeah.
Joe. To see all the leaving the stage or something like it was an actual show. That's that
is charming.
quite nice.
That is
I was
lovely.
charmed
Yeah.
by it.
Do you know if they filmed in front of an audience? Because they play
There's
like,
elements of it and then not.
yeah, they play like audience reactions.
Yeah,
so presumably not, and it's just like all staged, right?
Yeah, I don't know whether if it's faked, it's done very well, especially for the time. But yeah, it does kind of feel as if it's like a recorded live performance because of the way it's portrayed.
I think I would say it was faked to give that effect. So I vaguely recall that like when it was released, it was kind of toured around theaters, wasn't it? Like I think like some small number
with a
of theaters.
live orchestra.
No, like I think they would like project it at a theater, and you'd come and like dress up and sit down like you're going to see a live show. But then they would play Fantasia, which I lament not being able to do that now. If they were to like do that now, I'd actually probably pay and go see it. Dress up and everything, and really like live the experience of like imagining you were there at that time.
Yeah. Well, I would love that if they had like a live orchestra.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it
the-
without a live orchestra.
the music and an actual conductor saying the soundtrack and so on.
Well, you'd
then I
like
would love it.
redo all of that.
Yeah. Make it like a piece of theatre out of cinema when it basically is presented as a piece of theatre. Yeah.
I wonder if they've ever done that, because that seems eminently possible, right?
I mean, they've had
a lot of years.
80 years to do so. 85. Yeah. Maybe they will.
And this is
One
also
day.
your favourite bit. With the
Soundtrack.
The soundtrack.
yeah.
I do love the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's got such... This also charms me, Joe. This also charms me.
Is it lovely?
Yeah, it is lovely. Yeah, yeah. When he's give it some gas and so
Yeah.
on. He's saying all these 40s-isms and I love it. And he's talking to the sound wave like it's a real thing. Yeah. Drop the boot, or is one of his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any strong feelings on this, Dave?
I like this one as well. Like I said, like I like the opening of Act 1. I like these more abstract kind of expressions of the concept, and I thought it was kind of fun, like the way that they staged that he was kind of like talking to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I love all of that. I want that to be recreated exactly. If I was to see a live version of it, I want them to do that.
I think it's really fun, and it injects a bit of comedy into an otherwise moderately serious movie. Really, I mean, there's not a lot of comedy in the visuals that you see. And it helps endear me to it's halfway through the movie, but it helps me endear me to the conductor and, well, the guy, the announcer guy. Yeah, I think it's really well done. I kind of wish that there was more of that kind of thing, like a little bit of
More zaniness.
yeah,
Because
like a bit of Zane in
Because
my
we had at the end of The Sorcerer's Apprentice, we had that projection of Mickey coming
Mouse.
up. And,
Yeah, I love that as
Yeah,
well.
that's
Where he
good.
tugs on
Conductor.
his trousers and has a little
Yeah.
dialogue.
Yeah, Leopold
Stokowski. Yeah.
Stokowski.
Yeah.
So he's a fascinating guy. But I was reading about him a little bit, and he was like famous for not using a baton when he conducted, so he used his hands.
Yeah. And now that's like the stereotypical thing.
Yeah,
lot of people
I
think
think
of, right?
like Disney
There's a bit
themselves.
Bugs Bunny
ate it.
doing that
Oh, it's
later
Bugs
on
Bunny.
as
It's Bugs Bunny
well.
that did it. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
would not be Disney
No,
themselves.
that's not Disney. Yeah. And like the I believe like a statue of Mickey like shaking his hand was in like the entrance hallway,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Of,
It's a really timeless
yeah.
look, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
something completely timeless.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, you know that the actual redesign of Mickey was done for this movie.
Was it?
Yeah, it was done for this movie and then used in a couple of shorts before this movie was released. But without this movie, we may not have got.
Oh, so did he
you
look
know,
like Steamboat? Was it Steamboat Willie? Did he look like that before? Yeah.
Like somewhat simplistic to what we now look at as Mickey Mouse. The iconography of what Mickey looks like now is basically due to this movie.
Oh, maybe that makes sense then. Why I think of him in Fantasia when I think of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah,
Literally the first
Steamboat
version.
Willie is very 20zy looking.
Yeah.
Mickey,
yeah.
isn't
I don't
he?
think
The whole thing is very 20s looking.
Yeah. I think it's because it's from the 20s. Yeah.
Yes, so the intermission, quite interesting. And then the pastoral sympathy with the mythical Greek Roman. We've sort of talked about this, the racial connotations.
Too long, too racist.
This one's really boring.
I also don't like this
I
one.
like I like elements of it. It's
too
just so
lovey-dovey.
damn long. I like it towards the end when Zeus is getting involved and all that kind of stuff. But it's the
Bit of a dick, isn't he?
It's the chase of the centaurs and that goes
The
on
love,
for real
the love stuff in
long
there.
time.
It's boring.
I liked like the little Pegasuses at the beginning, or Pegasi, whatever.
Pegasus. Oh yeah, that was a bit of
Pegasuses.
yeah. That was a nice bit of like levity and fun. The smaller one can't fly properly.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The mom has to help it. But it's all the centaur stuff that drags a little bit for me. Like it's just really slow and there's not a lot going on.
What I did, because I was, my attention was waning a little bit at this point, but I was thinking about, the diversity of the shorts that they put together. This is why I think of it as an anthology, because they're basically just short films, right, that they've just put together.
Yeah.
And like the diversity of what's on display. And I think the fact, that we can have such wildly different opinions about them, I think is quite good. And normally the sign of a good anthology, because it probably means that there are other people that would have this as their favorite one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
correct.
yeah, 100%.
Well, I mean, I was
Someone out
surprised
there
that
will love this.
Yeah, I was surprised that the first one was one of your favourites. So we've had that very much between us three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking back to that first one, I just remembered when I first watched it. It was almost like I almost went into a trance.
Yeah,
watching
exactly.
it. I
No,
was almost
exactly.
not asleep, but I was kind of not quite there.
And that's literally
Yeah.
what they're trying to get you to do, isn't it? Is to be like
Yeah,
pulled
yeah.
in, like
Pulled in by no dialogue, no story, no nothing but
Yeah.
the visuals.
I have to say, throughout this, the music choices are fantastic. That's the one thing. I love this classical music, and I think this is why I know a lot of these musical pieces.
Yeah, probably,
just
yeah.
because where do I know them from? Well, I have no definitive answer for that, but potentially it's this, and that this was an introduction to classical music.
And perhaps without this, maybe a couple of them wouldn't be so much in the zeitgeist as they are now.
Yeah,
I mean, the Nutcracker would have probably prevailed as it
Well, the Nutcracker
it's one of
still
the
gets-
most famous things imaginable.
But the Nutcracker still gets performed at the Birmingham Hippodrome,
Yeah.
for example, every Christmas in November and December time.
Well, apparently there are like ballets around the world, like 40% of their income is from just doing the Nutcracker.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
Which is
yeah.
interesting when he says in the middle of it, when he's introducing it, like that this is rarely performed nowadays. I'm like, well, that didn't.
Yeah,
age
it's
very
interesting.
well.
Aged in like the weird reverse opposite
Yeah,
way.
yeah, like it's huge. Now.
Maybe in like 50 years that will once again be true.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows actually on that one. I guess depends if the traditions and around the world, American Western traditions prevail in some senses, like these sort of old school traditions. Because you see less things like Christmas carolers nowadays. You see less sort of traditional carols, and Nutcracker is kind of part of that Christmas gathering as well, and the build up to Christmas. So be interesting to see if that does prevail, if it kind of goes in, slides a steep slope down into obscurity or not.
What I
Yeah.
find interesting is that like because I kind of like group like ballet and classical music and opera and all these kind of things together as I don't
Are they
really
like
know.
high art? You're grouping them into high art.
Yeah, I don't know if that's even a fair
Posh.
comparison. Yeah, but it's interesting that like of all those things, ballet is
like
still
Fraser
so
Crane
well.
type stuff. Is
Yeah,
what you've
yeah,
got in your
yeah.
mind. Yeah.
But ballet does well.
Yeah, I don't think I'd
But-
say that about classical music, but I definitely don't know much about ballet or opera purely because, I ain't got the money to go,
Yeah, well, yeah.
go watch
Well,
those.
we say this is the thing, right? This is the depiction we have, but there's nothing stopping you going off to the cinema to go and watch something that has been done at the Met in New York. There's nothing
Oh
stopping
yeah, there's
us
definitely
paying
nothing
£15.
stopping me. No,
And it's interesting that we don't because of the
Like the zeitgeist.
yeah.
The,
But I actually recently went to see Tosca, the opera.
what was that
at the
like?
theatre. It's great. It's really good, and it's split into 3 acts, 3 intervals, and there is so much death and sex and all these interesting things in it, and they're simple stories. It's like an episode of EastEnders in a high art setting. It's brilliant.
yeah.
How long was it?
Like 2.5, 3 hours, but
like-
it's
Yeah,
set
it's
off
the
in
length of
3
like a go
Like
watch a play.
yeah,
or-
yeah.
I've seen one opera because I was inspired to do so after watching Amadeus, the movie. But I enjoyed it, but for whatever reason I didn't watch any others.
And when they put these ones live from the Met on in the intermissions, it goes off into the backstage, and you watch the crew create the next scene for the play. Because some of these scenes, they're so huge, and the Met is like 100, 200 feet. It's huge, and they can have these expansive sets, and you get sometimes an intermission of like 2 hours, and you just go off, have lunch, come back, because they set it up.
God, really?
Yeah, and they're these huge things, I think, like things that weigh a ton that get set up for these scenes. And they depict all these different... Tosca specifically depicts a lot of this stuff, and with classical music and operatic voice. But it's not high art, really. People dress up and go to it. And it does seem to be fenced off for older people and as something that will die out. But I don't think... I think if they brought it to the mainstream, it would work.
Well, it's 'cause
I
it's got
genuinely
a-
think it would work.
It's got a little bit of an image problem, hasn't it?
It does, a
really?
huge image
and
problem.
It's probably because of like decades of TV and movies painting characters that like it as
Yeah, like-
kind of poshos.
like Frasier.
Yeah, and characters that don't like it as the normals, right? Like there's that
Yeah.
episode of Cheers where they go for Diane to the opera. And
Yeah,
even
yeah.
Diane falls asleep. It doesn't make
Yeah.
it doesn't paint opera in a good light for something millions of people watched.
I guess. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish.
I was just saying, once you see it as an EastEnders episode
Yeah.
and with singing, that's all it needs.
And so then Fantasia almost feels like a way of Walt Disney like getting young people, at least his idea was that this is a way of getting young people to listen to this kind of music
see,
and be
absolutely.
interested
Yeah.
in ballet.
100%.
And it's kind of interesting then that we've just been talking about how successful ballet is right now. And I wonder, like, how frequently do people watch Fantasia? It's funny.
Yeah. We're never going to know, really.
No,
Nobody's
no.
ever going to know the way culture moves.
Yeah.
For all we know, I mean, people, 30 years ago would never have believed that Star Wars and Marvel movies would be like the biggest money-making, popular, everybody kind of knows about them, watches them, or likes them
But
to
then
some
that
degree.
goes the other way as well, because now they're on the decline. There'll be something else in its place.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, even horror movies at the moment are huge.
That's somewhat in the
They're vogue.
zeitgeist. Yeah.
They're like, there's so many recently going to see Nosferatu, the trailers. There's some huge ones coming out this year, and they're not just coming out at a specific time, October. They're coming out throughout the year, and it's because people are going to see them.
Well, Demi Moore, she won a Golden Globe, didn't she, for the Substance?
she win it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe so. Yeah.
So
Well,
there
at
you
least
go.
got nominated. We'll see. I can't remember now, but like the fact that even happened, that wouldn't have even happened 5 years ago, probably.
Well, I mean, it's been a long time before. It's been a long time since like prestige directors and auteur directors have chosen after a few movies to do a horror movie. Like that, they never used to do that. It's got a prestige to it now purely because these directors and the actors that choose to be in them are elevating them, and yeah, it's great to see.
Right, we've got a couple more shorts to get through. So we got Dance of the Hours, a comic ballet in 4 sections. This is probably my bronze medal position player
Yeah.
on this one. I
This
just
is my
enjoy this one.
medalless, best of the
Yeah.
medalless,
Yeah.
4th place.
Yeah, I'd probably put
Best of the rest.
Best of the rest, yeah.
The hello mother, hello father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason and that reason alone,
Because it just reminds you of
it reminds me
Simpsons.
of probably my favourite ever scene in The Simpsons.
That's a strong.
I love
that's a
that.
strong
That's like-
comment.
It's a really funny moment.
Yeah, it is great. It is
Yeah.
great.
as a specific moment, nothing gets much better.
You'll have to speak up on wearing a towel. Is probably
Yeah, that's great
That's
too.
right up there. Yeah,
there's so many.
I was
but
talking to Mabel. I says, yeah.
It's all my moments either Homer or Mole Man. So this is one of those
And the
great Homer
burns.
moments.
You got to get the burns in there.
Yeah. And the burns.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, I think this one starts a little dry for me.
Yes,
I'm gonna
once
say.
the alligators come in,
once the alligators.
that's when I was
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and then I retrospectively enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah, very much so.
When I finished, I actually went back and rewatched this one specifically.
When we're just doing ostriches and then we're just doing elephants, it's fine.
I find ostriches inherently quite funny.
No, that's
I'm entertained.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is like the intention. So like,
They're like ghoulish.
Yeah, because they're kind of like
Lanky
stereotypically not
they're clumsy animals,
Yeah.
right? That's the thing. The first three.
not
is
the
it,
dancers of the animal
is it
kingdom.
elephants? The third one? What's
Yeah, we
the
got
third one?
Elephants is
Yeah.
second, and then hippos is third, isn't it? Or is hippos second?
Ostrich, hippo, elephant, then alligators.
Oh yeah, I've got it,
So, like,
got
the-
it written down and didn't even look.
Yeah, you just freeballing and
Yeah.
just going for it.
Thanks.
But yeah, like that's the joke, right? Is that they're clumsy animals.
Yeah.
And again, this is like this this recontextualization idea, because the original dances, I believe, celebrating the different times of the day.
Yeah.
It's like morning, afternoon, evening, and night. And so they do that with animals. Like the slinky alligators coming out at night, and that's when it gets good. And I
like
really start
sneaking
to
with their
enjoy.
capes and so on, yeah.
I really enjoy like the chaos of that final section.
Yeah, when they bring out all of the other animals from
Yeah,
the previous segments. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. If I didn't enjoy the dinosaur one so much, this would have probably got a bronze medal for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally,
The big one.
You
Yeah.
got my gold medal.
the OG
place.
Night on Bald Mountain.
Yeah.
but 100% gets my gold medal, as well.
Including the Ave Maria bit, which You could argue is a separate piece, but I just put them together.
No, I think
light and dark.
they work together. I think.
Yeah.
They're light and dark. They were meant to be seen together. As daylight comes, light prevails.
But yeah,
it's interesting that this was the only time that they combined two pieces of music together. By intention. They could have overdone that, and lessen the impact of it. But yeah, I wish it was longer, especially like the first half of it.
Yeah,
because I had such a strong memory of it, and I was so excited all the way through for it to come. Then it was over.
Yeah,
and,
I don't wish it was longer because it would be overly long. Then this is perfect. It makes you want more for me.
I mean, yeah, I could, so long as it had more ideas to throw at it. I could definitely go for longer, especially as the Ave Maria bit is, or at least it seems so much shorter than the darker Bald Mountain bit. Yeah, but I think the contrast is beautiful. I've already extolled the virtues of the first bit, but the second bit is brilliant as well, with the kind of candle light on the distance, and
it's very overtly horror in this section as well.
Definitely.
And death and the depiction of the devil.
Very much so, yeah.
Bringing things back to life and the ghosts and ghouls of the night and
Chernobyl. Yeah, so it's like a Russian in demon basically. Basically the stand-in for the devil in like the Russian culture.
Yeah.
Do you know that the Ave Maria sequence has like the longest single take in animation, or something, like the longest physical piece of film ever committed?
Oh, right.
At that time. And apparently, like, when they tried to film it the first time, they fucked it up and had to do it again.
Oh, yeah. I did read this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also read that it was originally going to end on a church, but then they decided against it because it would be too overtly religious. And then I also read that they... was it Lon Chaney or... I think it was Lon Chaney.
Bela Lugosi?
It was Bela Lugosi.
Yeah. They brought him in and like, no, we don't.
Yeah.
It's not working for us.
Yeah. But you can tell sort of with
a
lot of the movements and the facial expressions and so on. Yeah.
So they ended up just like getting one of the animators to do it, and it worked much better. Way it goes.
I love that some of the things. Do you know about the Herman Schultes book? And think about the Herman Schultes. He was one of he worked on it, and he did a lot of the made the contraptions, augmented it, and he came up with some of the ideas. They wouldn't have happened without him. And this book was lost for about half a century. And they only found it, recently, 20, 30 years, and when he died. And after every day of filming, he would write down observations. He would write down he would actually have the whole book as a piece of art in a way, and it would be like, this needs to be 90 degrees, 3 inches, and it would be the contraptions he would make. So in this scenario, the ghosts, so how they made the ghosts like that, is that they put them on a revolving drum, and then they shot it through a distorted mirror, like a house.
Cool.
And so it would make them do this stuff.
Have like a ripple effect.
Yeah. And it's this sort of ingenuity which makes this film fantastic. It's that sort of thing. And in other areas, he would actually create this snowflake thing and have it revolve on a drum and things, and then shoot it within other bits. And it's incredible ingenuity about what he did. And things would be underwater, and it would be the volcanoes going. Just incredible work. So if you can find it, you can have a look at the Herman Schultes book. It's incredible.
And was he involved in all the segments, or just this last one?
Yeah, I think he's involved in all the segments. And in fact, the whole film doesn't happen without him, basically. And he sort of faded into obscurity. It's easy to put it out there for Walt Disney and the like, but there's hundreds of animators, 3 years.
Yeah, thousands, I heard.
Yeah. So I do think it's... there's so many unsung heroes about this film. Quite incredible. And this last section is my favourite. Like, I was never scared. I know I was never scared. I feel like I was always like conducting. I loved that scene at the end. I relished it when it came on. I wasn't scared by it. I loved it, the darkness and the craziness, and I wanted to conduct it myself. I was like the devil on top.
Yeah,
loving it.
Well, it's powerful as well, isn't it? And it gives a strong representation of this being of power. Like everything until we get to the Ave Maria segment when he's forced back into his mountain. He's conducting everything there. Yeah. He's in control of everything. Yeah.
probably my favorite piece of music out of the lot as well.
Yeah,
Maybe
very
because
much
of the
so.
association to this. But it's very like
It's
dramatic.
in competition
yeah.
with the dinosaurs one for me, but yeah.
I think all the music fits so well. If I have to give this movie anything, it's the incredible music which they choose. It's just great.
Agree.
So, this film then,
Yes.
let's give you, what's your top 3
Of the
of all of the
segments.
segments?
So Bald Mountain / Ave Maria first, of course.
Interesting. You start with gold. Carry on.
1 to 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I can reverse it if you want.
No, it's too
That's,
late.
that's the point now. Jesus.
So I've edited it. Could do it all.
Yeah.
But so then second is Mickey Mouse Apprentice, and then third, which by the way, I didn't just as I was. They were originally conceiving it to be Dopey from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because obviously that was the first Disney movie and preceded this one. They thought about using.
What, in the Sorcerer's Apprentice?
Yeah.
Really?
And then they decided Mickey Mouse instead.
Well, he
because
wanted Disney wanted to revitalize Mickey, right? Because he was losing
because
popularity.
he was more of a 20s icon.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know whether they'd done much with him later on. So yeah, it's Sorcerer's Apprentice, and then it's the dinosaur evolution one. Is my top 3. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I like the hippos and the ostriches dancing. I think
that's my number 4.
hilarious. That's
Yeah.
number 3 for me. Number 2 is Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mickey Mouse, incredible sequence. I specifically do remember watching that one at my grandma's house a lot of the time. That would throw that on the videotape, and that would get rewound again and again. Just one of my favourite memories from childhood there. And then the first one, because of just, it's kind of horror, isn't it? It is definitely horror. That's part of my love of it. I love this sort of change between light and dark and good and evil. It's great. It's just everything you want.
Contrast, the
There's
music.
I mean, the music,
Brilliant.
that is, fantastic. I mean, as you say, I always think of that scene, even today, when that piece of music comes on. Just awesome.
So 3. I previously said earlier that it was my favorite one, but that's because I was excluding 1 and 2 just by default because I just put them as
because that was the assumption.
So number 3 is the dinosaur one. Number 2, Mickey Mouse. Number 1, Ave Maria. Yeah, same as you, isn't it? I think, Mike.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we've all got the same number 1, so it's just like The Descent in the podcast favourite.
The Ford Mondeo with Fantasia.
Yeah. I'm glad that's not just me saying that now.
No, that was Dave's turn. Next time it'll be me.
Yeah, The Descent and what's the fucking
Night on Bald Mountain.
Night on Bald Mountain. Yeah, those two.
A weird out of context list of podcast favourites we could do eventually when we've got 10.
Yeah. How do you think it stands up then through modern eyes? Let's take away the historical element, strip it back.
I think it's very impressive now, purely because it is hand-drawn animation, and we don't get a lot of that anymore. Maybe if it was 1990, I might think differently, because hand-drawn animation was still in vogue and you'd see it on your screens. As I say, some of the elements maybe are less, well, I'll admit them maybe, aren't as impressive as they were in 1940. But I think the strongest segments here definitely are, and I think they'll always be impressive. Unless Fantasia, 2050 comes out and blows everybody's minds. It'll always be impressive.
It definitely makes it, for me, look fresh and new. Something different from Disney today or Pixar. It feels as if they experimented, and that if they pulled it off or it didn't really matter.
Yeah, I think
it was part of
that's
it.
how I feel as well. Like, yes, the nowadays the hand-drawn animation is very rare, but it's the fact that it was such an experiment that at the time I don't think it was very successful, but and retrospectively it's got a lot of acclaim, but this type of film never really took off, to the best of my knowledge,
No.
right?
Which is unfortunate.
It is.
I would
It
have
is.
loved
It is unfortunate.
for that.
And for that reason more than anything, just the fact that it's almost like a historical oddity. It's fascinating. There are so few films like this.
Yeah.
I don't think it would work. if you did again, if you know, other than maybe Fantasia 2000 and all this stuff, I don't think you could keep making it the way Disney wanted to when you re-release it a few years and interchange
Yeah, he wanted to
things.
swap out the segments, didn't he? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we have music videos now, so anyone can like when they release their single, they could do a music video inspired by this, and there probably I don't know any, but there probably is scores of those.
It is it's truly revolutionary, but it, you know, for me, some of the sequences are dated. And I did find myself at times a little bit bored and like waning at times, wanting to not watch it all in one go. It can be, and some of the...
I can definitely feel that for the Greek gods one that we already said for.
And there's some of the narration stuff in the middle of it stilts it a little bit for me, where it's like, I'm going to over-explain every single moment.
I really like that.
I think that's lovely.
Some of it's charming. I'm not saying some of it is charming, but I think it's a bit overdone. I don't think you need to completely... I think that is something of the 40s. I don't think you would be able to do that today and get away with it. And that's what I mean. I'm not saying it isn't charming and of its time. I'm just saying
I think I'm probably
lens.
being powered by nostalgia as well, in that I very much like those scenes because they just remind me of being a kid, and you know.
Yeah, they do to me. Me too. Like, I'm not going to go. I'm just saying that.
No, I'm not combating you.
I am trying to look very much through a lens of like, God, this hasn't exactly aged well. Like the Oriental mushrooms, I don't think that necessarily has aged that well. I think they're quite funny, and I think if you got rid of like the way they made their eyes look and stuff like that, and the overtly sort of stereotypical nature of it, that sequence is quite funny still, and the little mushroom like struggling to keep up.
Yeah, I think
is cute.
I agree with that. Yeah, divorce of the connotations, like that segment of that sequence is my favorite of all of them. You know, within the Nutcracker.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't ignore the connotations of it, really.
Yeah.
But if you can, then it's my favorite. Like
Well,
the actual concept of it is.
They might
quite fun.
digitally alter it in the future.
Yeah.
Although I hope they
imagine,
don't.
like they
I
have.
really hope they don't. I don't want them to do that because it's not overt.
Would somebody
enough,
please think of the children?
The children won't give a shit.
Yeah,
about
I feel
Oriental
like
mushrooms.
kids won't imbibe that and make that connection and pick up racism.
Yeah, probably.
Looking at that segment.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Mummy, why is that Oriental mushroom such a bad depiction of... I don't think that's going to happen. But... Could
Could
happen. We could. But it won't.
Joe says.
Yeah.
Like, I make a recommendation watching this as well.
The Aristocats.
Yeah, no.
We are Siamese.
Hercules is the best.
No,
Yeah.
Aristocats.
And Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Nah,
Flipping great.
overrated.
You're going to get someone moaning at you in
Yeah.
the comments.
There you go. That just put us like 18 and over. because of that.
Explicit. Never
Yeah.
recommend this video, YouTube.
Yeah.
When I was watching Fantasia, I didn't watch it in one go, actually. And I in fact, I watched every single segment separately just because I was just slotting it into my day over the last few days. And for that reason, I loved the introduction by Deems Taylor for every single section.
Yeah.
It made it felt...
You had a bit of time to sit with it and...
Yeah, and
compare
it
it
kind
to
of
the others.
it brought me back into like the actual event of what I was viewing, and it always kind of made me like when I blocked out the 20 minutes or so to watch a segment, hearing him like get back on stage and then introduce the segment, it made me pay attention.
You're doing it for the TikTok generation. Fantasia for TikTok.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. When Shaft watches it in 2 minute bits. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if and I honestly I couldn't really imagine watching all of it 2 hours one go. I would skip through some of the sections if I was watching it.
I think
again.
it's very relaxing, though. I mean, you might call it boring, but I think it's relaxing. Even in those too long elements. I'm complaining about the length of those bits for this because I was like sitting there paying attention for the podcast so I can talk about it. But if I'm just putting it on
taxing your brain trying to pay attention, make notes.
Yeah, must not blink. Need to see every bit. But if I'm just putting it on just for a bit of fun, I don't mind those segments being a bit overlong purely because I'm just relaxing, probably not staring at the screen intently. So yeah,
Yeah, I think it is relaxing if I was in that frame of mind, and I will probably put it on in the background when I can't sleep to just chill me out a bit.
Yeah.
In like moments, I think that's quite a good way of doing it. Even that bloody scene with the what's the one that we with the black horse.
Oh, the Greek one.
Yeah, that
It
one.
being black wasn't the problem. It was first it was the hoarseness, now the blackness. It's the slaveness that people didn't like.
Was there connotation in slate or joking?
Yeah.
That one.
That one. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you two want to say? Anything you want to do?
No, that's it from me.
Nothing in particular.
Cool.
I think I've dropped all my little nuggets of truth in the conversation.
Great.
Fucking put them in the loo and shove them down the toilet.
No, these are good nuggets. These are the ones the Gold Rush kind of kickstarted.
Yeah. All right, so that is Fantasia, the original, 1940, the OG. Yeah.
The original
Yep.
gangster.
Thank you, Mike and Dave, for joining me on this retrospective. If you look above, you'll see all sorts of things happening right now, discords and stuff. Agree or disagree? Tell us your favourite section of this movie. I'd love to know, and why as well. So leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.